Hello friends, welcome to a new video on Yoga and Ayurveda. The present video is part of a lecture series created for the Advanced Yoga Teacher Training Module, Marma Yoga, a unique project by the National Library of Ayurveda Medicine. My name is Dr. Sumit Kesarkar and I will be your host throughout this video, which presents an introduction to yoga and makes an attempt to trace its origins and subsequent history. The word yoga is derived from the Sanskrit root or dhatu yuj, which means to join or union. The word yoga, hence used in any context, defines unity or oneness of the prime fundamentals of that context leading to its final goal. For example, in Ayurveda medicine, a compound formulation is known as yoga, which indicates the perfect union of the ingredients which may give the expected therapeutic result in an ailment it is designed for. In same context of the term Raj Yoga, as expounded by Patanjali, indicates the final goal of complete merger or union of individual consciousness with supreme consciousness based on its core fundamentals. To understand further, let us take example of another form of yoga called Hatha Yoga, whose fundamental practices find their source in Tantra. Tantra is derived from two Sanskrit dhatus, Tannoti and Trayati, which mean expansion and liberation respectively. Hence yoga, in conjunction with Hatha, denotes its final goal at expanding consciousness towards liberating creative energy, which it terms as Maya, Prakriti or Shakti, and finally merging it with the inert consciousness of Shiv or Purush through various methods of Hatha. In the same vein, the goal of other forms of yoga like Bhakti Yoga, Laya Yoga, Mantra Yoga and Kundalini Yoga can be understood. It is highly inappropriate or extremely difficult to arrive at a specific time period for the exact origin of yoga. Since yoga is such a multifaceted practice, deep-rooted in very essence of probably an advanced civilization from the Indian subcontinent. With the available archaeological data, we can speculatively but quite clearly say it was developed more than 10,000 years ago. Statues and seals of Shiv and Parvati performing various asana and meditation have been found in the archaeological excavations made in the Indus Valley at Harappa and Mohenjo-daro. The Indus Valley civilization is dated as back as 3300 BCE. The seal of Pashupat, found in Indus Valley excavations, is the earliest depiction of yoga, which shows a humanoid figure attributed to Lord Shiv. Seated in a meditative yogic pose, Lord Shiv is hence considered the creator of yoga and is known as Adi Guru or first teacher. We can try and ascertain a time frame to yoga by its earliest documentations. It must though be kept in mind that before the advent of codified systems in India, the knowledge was passed in form of oral traditions from teachers to students, and hence the practice of yoga may have predated any treatise, which we may attempt to put a codified time period by many years or even centuries. Hence further through this video, the use of word codified attempts to put a time frame to the physical version of treatise according to the accepted and available data of research in Indology, and certainly not to the first oral transmission of its knowledge. References to yoga can be earliest found in the Vedas, which many scholars believe were codified when the Indus Valley culture was flourishing around 1300 to 1500 BCE. The Veds do not mention the practice of yoga, but allude to it symbolically. Vedic knowledge is considered a Shruti, which means knowledge revealed by seers or rishis who attained them in states of deep meditation. This deep meditative state can be attributed to the yogic state of samadhi, and hence the existence of Veds is testimony to the prevalence of flourishing yoga practices at that time. However, it is the Upanishads where yoga began to take its individual shape. Let us try and trace the origins of yoga in an interactive timeline on basis of yoga literature of prime substance. Katho Upanishad, codified date unknown, but scholars place it around 600 BCE. Katho Upanishad details the story of a young Brahmin, Nachiket, who is granted 3 wishes by Yam, the Lord of Death. His last wish is to know about life after death, in response to which Yam teaches him the fundamentals of yoga and immortality of the jiva or soul. Shvetashvatro Upanishad, codified date unknown, but scholars place it around 400 BCE. Fundamentals of yoga like meditation, control through posture, and samadhi are described. Maitrayanya Upanishad, codified around 300 BCE. It formalizes the sixfold form of yoga. Over a period of time, dedicated Upanishads to yoga known as Yoga Upanishad, a corpus of about 22 texts oriented to Vedanta philosophy, were established, which by the 18th century reached their final compilation, comprising some rewritings of older texts and several newly composed texts. These texts elaborated several forms of yoga: mantra yoga, laya yoga, hatha yoga, and raj yoga. Mahabharata, the Moksha Dharma, Book 12, Part 2, discusses in length various systems of yoga. Though codified status of Mahabharata is unknown, scholars presume the Moksha Dharma to have been codified around the early parts of 4 BCE. Yoga Sutra, codified around 1 BCE to 4th CE. Though the sutras are attributed to Patanjali, scholars of Indology believe that the original text may have been revised over time by many authors till its present form. It shows a dominative influence of Sankhya philosophy. It comprises of 4 chapters with 195 aphorisms, which describe fundamentals of yoga philosophy with introduction to Ashtanga Yoga or 8-limbed yoga, Yam or proper behavior, Niyam or proper attitude, Asan or posture, Pranayam or control of breath or cosmic energy, Pratyahar or withdrawal of senses, Dharan or concentration, Dhyan or meditation, and Samadhi or final absorption or dissolution. Yoga Sutra shows shades of Mahayana Buddhism and also supposed to be at the core fundamentals of Jainism. Yoga Yajnavalkya, codified around 2nd BCE to 4th CE, contains 12 chapters in 504 verses, expounds Patanjali's 8-limbed yoga or Ashtanga yoga. Main features are extensive discussion of various pranayam through 100 verses, Applications of Yoga to Ayurveda. Simplified logical explanation of Kundalini, all done through a dialogue between sage Yajnavalkya and his philosopher wife Gargi. The treatise is first of its kind, which makes yoga universally applicable to both men and women. The concepts of Yoga Yajnavalkya are heavily borrowed in further texts like Hatha Yoga Pradipika and certain Yoga Upanishads. Somewhere around 1st century, the system of Hatha Yoga began to take firm roots. Hatha Yoga incorporates physical exercises as a major aspect of spiritual development. However, it no way confirms that Hatha Yoga was not practiced before 1st century. In the Rig Veda, a text supposed to be codified more than 4000 years ago, several Hatha Yoga concepts like Granthi, Asan and 5 forms of Vayu are mentioned through interpretive symbolism. In the Bhagavad Gita, the main Hatha Yoga practices are mentioned. Thirumantiram, codified around 7th century, can be considered as the first premier book of Hatha Yoga. Written in Tamil by Saint Thirumular, it contains lengthy poetic verses describing Tantric Kundalini Yoga, expounding Shaivism philosophy of South India. The Hatha period gained maximum impetus from works of 2 legendary Nath sages, Matsyendrinath and Gorakshanath, who lived around 9th and 10th century respectively. Gorakshanath was the student of Matsyendrinath. Matsyendrinath heard the teachings of Hatha Yoga from the very lips of Lord Shiv, who is considered the creator of Hatha Yoga and known as Adinath, the first guru of Nath tradition. Matsyendrinath, in spite of his vast knowledge, arguably never codified a treatise. His student Gorakshanath authored around 32 books on topics ranging from philosophy, cosmology and yoga, of which only few survived the centuries. Gorakshanath is considered as the premier saint to have propagated the Nath tradition in which the modern Hatha Yoga practices are rooted. We take a look at some of his prime defining works related to yoga. Goraksha Samhita, codified around 10th to 11th century, is also known as Goraksha Paddhati. It describes the origin of 84 classic asana, though it mentions and describes only 2 in detail, the Siddhasana and the Padmasana. It gives a wonderful etymology of the term Hat by explaining that the sun Ha and the moon Tha exist in the body similarly to how they exist in the sky. The moon is thought to be at the root of the palate and the sun inside the abdomen. Many scholars consider the Goraksha Samhita to be the first book on Hatha Yoga. Goraksha Shatak, codified around the 10th to 12th century. It is in form of 100 verses. Out of the 8 branches of Patanjali Ashtanga Yoga, it discusses only 6, leaving out Yam and Niyam. It puts emphasis on the physical purity of the body through methods of cleansing known as Shatkar, as opposed to the personal and social disciplines of Yam and Niyam as mentioned by Patanjali. Apart from Goraksha Samhita, Siddha Siddhanta Paddhati and Yoga Martand, authored by Gorakshanath, are considered canons of Nath traditions and Hatha Yoga practices. Sharada Tilaka Tantra, codified around 10th to 11th century, authored by Lakshman Deshikendra in 25 chapters which equate to 25 principles of Sankhya. It gives brief overview of cosmology, mantra and yantra depicting tantra worship. Chapter 25 is dedicated to yoga with description of nadis, kundalini and chakra. The number of chakra are said to be arguable as opposed to the definitive 6 chakras known in Hatha Yoga Pradipika. Yoga Shastra, codified around 11th to 13th century, authored by Dattatreya. It teaches Ashtanga Yoga, which it attributes to Yajnavalkya. It describes 10 Hatha Yoga practices undertaken by sage Kapil and other definitive practices which in times came to be known as mudra or seals in Hatha Yoga. Hatha Yoga Pradipika, codified around 15th to 17th century. The book authored by Swatarma Yogin is like a manual on which practices of modern Hatha Yoga is based. Comprising of 4 chapters and 389 couplets, it integrates physical disciplines with higher spiritual goals and practices. It mentions of Laya Yoga and meditation. It describes 15 asanas. Hatha Yoga Pradipika enlists a family tree of 33 greatest Hatha Yogis or Siddhas. At the top of the list is Adinath or first master, another name for Lord Shiv. After that comes Matsendranath, then Gorakshanath, followed by a whole lineup of great teachers that succeeded him. From this point on, many texts specifically devoted to Hatha Yoga became more common. We look at some of the defining works as we move towards the current timeline. Shiv Sahita, probably codified around 11th to 15th century. It expounds yoga teachings yet calls itself Tantra and describes complex physiology. It mentions 84 asanas, but only 4 of them are described in detail. It describes 5 types of prana and provides techniques to regulate them along with mudras and various practices of meditation. It mainly emphasizes that even a common householder can practice yoga and benefit from it, and hence for the first time brings about yoga as a practice of commons. Many scholars consider Shiv Sahita to be codified in early 11th century, predating Hatha Yoga Pradipika, while others place it as late as 17th to 18th century. Gheranda Sahita, codified around 17th to 18th century, authored by sage Gherand. It builds on Hatha Yoga Pradipika and describes 32 asanas, different pranayam techniques, mudra, bandha and shatkarma, inclusive of 13 types of dhotis. It is one of the unique texts to describe yogic diet in length. One can find slight influences of Vaishnava philosophy through this treatise for the first time in yoga literature. Hatha Ratnavali, codified around 18th century, authored by Srinivas. The South Indian text expounds on fundamentals of Hatha Yoga Pradipika. For the first time, 108 asanas are listed, but they are not very well described. Sri Tattvanidhi, codified around 18th to 19th century, compiled by Krishnaraja Vodiyar III, Maharaj of Mysore. It serves as a compendium of yoga, Indian wrestling exercises, and some British gymnastic practices. It enlists 122 asanas, all of which were adopted by the revered yoga teacher T. Krishnamacharya for his teachings at the Mysore Palace in early 20th century. These teachings forms the base of the current Ashtanga Vinayas practice so popular in modern times. Summarizing modern yoga, most systems prevalent today can be traced back to 4 or 5 prominent yoga teachers from the early part of 20th century. T. Krishnamacharya. T. Krishnamacharya developed the Ashtanga Yoga on the foundations of compendium Sri Tattvanidhi. Ashtanga Yoga combines asanas with the flow of breath and drushti or focus. Power Yoga and Vinyas Yoga are derivative of Krishnamacharya's Ashtanga Yoga. This yoga, also known as Mysore style yoga, is different from Ashtanga Yoga of Patanjali on grounds of practice. Krishnamacharya's work was propagated in and out of India by his distinguished students K. Pattabi Joyce, B. K. S. Iyengar, Indira Devi, Srivatsa Ramaswamy, and T. K. V. Desikachar in their own individual ways. Swami Sivananda Saraswati, a physician from South India who served in British Army and settled in Rishikesh. Swami Sivananda found the Sivananda Yoga based on principles of Hatha Yoga. Unlike the Ashtang Vinyas Yoga of Mysore, which focuses on athletic physical exercises through asana and bandha, Sivananda Yoga focused on health benefits of practitioner and is a more relaxed form of Hatha Yoga. His lineage was further expounded through his illustrious disciples Swami Vishnudevananda Saraswati, founder of the Sivananda Yoga Vedanta Center, Swami Satyananda Saraswati, founder of Bihar School of Yoga, Swami Satchitananda, and many others. There were many prominent masters who influenced yoga out of India and contributed to the overall global awareness of yoga in past 100 years. Swami Kuvalyananda was one of the premier persons to investigate yoga through modern scientific methods. He founded the Kaivalya Dham Health and Yoga Research Center in 1924, which promoted the cause. Paramahansa Yogananda introduced Kriya Yoga to the West. Kriya Yoga is an ancient system revived by the legendary Mahavatar Babaji and passed down through traditions to Lahari Mahasya and Yukteswar Giri, the guru of Swami Yogananda. Maharishi Mahesh Yogi, who started the Transcendental Meditation or the TM Siddhi program. Sri Ravi Shankar, who introduced the Sudarshan Kriya, a breathing-based technique that is a core component of his Art of Living courses. And finally, Swami Ramdev, who brought yoga awareness in grasp of common masses through his programs. The list would also be incomplete without the mention of masters who were not specifically teaching Hatha Yoga but helped in spread of his philosophy and practices. Ram Krishna Paramahansa and his student Swami Vivekananda, Sri Aurobindo Ghosh, Ramanna Maharishi, Swami Kripalvananda, Baba Haridas, Maharishi Kartikeya. Swami Ram was the first Indian yogi to be studied by West for his ability to voluntarily control bodily processes such as heartbeat, blood pressure and body temperature. Yogi Bhajan, who introduced Kundalini Yoga to the West. And finally, Bhagwan Sri Rajneesh or Osho. Based on the principles of Hatha Yoga, yoga in modern world has evolved into various individualized styles like hot yoga, power yoga, Kundalini yoga, Ashtanga Vinyas yoga, Iyengar yoga and many other forms individualized by different masters and schools. Though modern yoga is mostly about numerous asanas, it is interesting to note that the prime canons of yoga mention only limited number of asanas which are mostly basic seated positions. Let us take a look at the evolution of asana. Patanjali Yoga Sutra. No asana are described. Goraksha Samhita or the Goraksha Paddhati mentions 84 asanas but describes only two, the Siddhasana and the Padmasana. Hatha Yoga Pradipika mentions and describes 15 asanas. Shiv Samhita mentions 4 asanas, the Siddhasana, Padmasana, Ugrasana and Swastikasana, which are all simple seated positions. The Ghiranda Samhita mentions 84 asanas as all the previous texts, but is the first one to describe 32 asanas. Hatha Ratnavali is one of the first texts to attempt a listing of all the 84 asanas and describe them. Swami Vishnu Devananda in 1959 first published a compilation of 66 basic postures and 136 variations of those postures. Sri Dharma Mitra in 1975 compiled a list of 1300 variations of asanas derived from contemporary gurus, yogis and ancient and modern texts. This work is considered one of the prime references for asanas in the field of yoga today. His work is often mentioned in contemporary references for Iyengar Yoga, Ashtanga Vinyas Yoga and Sivananda Yoga. History of yoga can be roughly divided into 3 categories in view of its practices and final goal. Classical yoga, prevalent around 100 BC to 500 CE, based on Sankhya philosophy and cosmology. It emphasizes on meditation in progressive states of self-control to attain the transcendent, purified, ultimate state of self, the Purush. The Upanishads, the Bhagavad Gita and the Patanjali Yoga Sutra are the foundations of this classical yoga, also known as Raj Yoga. It aims to make the body calm, steady and stable without any rigorous asana, and further through concentration and meditation devoid the mind of sensory perception, which enables one to enter into a state of samadhi, where the physical world ceases to exist, or the illusion of the world vanishes. It is thus world rejecting. It is propagated in Gurukul style with student to teacher transmission. Hatha Yoga came into prominence from 500 BC till 1300 CE. Though it is believed to be the most ancient form of yoga, it emphasizes on purification of body through various yogic processes known as Shat Karma of Neti, Dhauti, Nauli, Basti, Kapalbhati and Tratak, as opposed to Raj Yoga methods of self-control of social vices. Hatha further emphasizes on bodily transcendence through sophisticated asana and breath control. It tends to gain voluntary control of autonomous functions of the body by achieving control over mind and psychic energy through bandha, mudra and chakra, thus imparting one with supernatural powers or siddhi. It aims at understanding and reaching the exclusive state of inert consciousness as equated to Lord Shiv and controlling the creative force of Kundalini equated to Shakti, and then finally achieving the state of highest transcendence by uniting the inert consciousness of Shiv with the creative force of Kundalini or Shakti. It thus follows Tantra philosophy. It details the results of each practice and gives a logical and definitive view of states of transcendence like Samadhi, as opposed to philosophy of Raj Yoga, which is world rejecting. Hatha Yoga practices are world affirming and tend to merge with the primordial source of creation to be free. Hatha Yoga is transmitted in guru-student lineage with different sects of Tantra and similar traditions. Modern Yoga, 19th century to present. Most methods of modern yoga are improvised forms of Hatha Yoga to serve worldly goals of physical fitness and flexibility, which are achieved through sophisticated and individualized techniques, as opposed to Hatha Yoga's perfect postures to control the autonomic nervous system. The main emphasis is on beautiful body structures and biomedico-media oriented goals, aligning modern yoga practices with modern scientific and medical explanation. The modern yoga principles are neither the unconscious mind model of Hatha Yoga nor the dead sensory perceptions of Raj Yoga, but expound new zones of secular spirituality. There is no emphasis on psychic control of the body or the concept of Samadhi as mentioned by Patanjali, but more towards a happy, healthy society and economic empowerment. It is hence very much oriented towards this world. Yoga is taught through yoga schools, which are organized as large-scale ashrams or small to medium private yoga studios. I hope this video was informative and made the subject clear. Comments and feedback are highly appreciated, and you can send them by writing to me at marmayog.nlam@gmail.com. For more information on Marma Yoga, please visit www.marmayog.in or the parent website for Ayurveda and Yoga at www.nlam.in.